Hello, everybody. I am really excited today to welcome Aoife Brady to the podcast. You and I have known each other for around 7 years, I think, something like that.
Feels like that, yeah.
In a good way, I hope.
It just feels like I've known you forever.
Yeah, well, certainly since I've been running Employer Branding Australia, we've been connected. And I think this is the first time I got you at one event to speak, but I think it's the first time we've actually sat down and had a chat about this stuff. So
Absolutely.
really excited to have you with us. I'd love you to introduce yourself, what you do today, and a bit about your background and your career.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this.
Pleasure.
Very exciting and such an honor to be able to engage with you again. So my name is Aoife Brady. I am the Talent Acquisition Manager at Fresh Hope Communities. We are a not-for-profit organization that works in aged care, retirement living, outdoor adventure, and affordable housing. I've spent the last 10, 11 years in community services, human services, all in that TA employee experience. Prior to that, I did the usual recruitment journey, agency here in Ireland, the kind of the usual story.
So interesting. And everybody who knows me knows I love human services, not just because of the nobility of purpose, but because of the juxtaposition and because of the real challenge there. And clearly you do as well. You're living it every day.
Absolutely. And I think every organization has some really good pros to talk about. I find in human services, there's a lot more than other sectors. You get to have a real impact in people's lives. And often we're coming into people's lives when maybe things aren't great and we're not seeing them in their best. And we get to hold an element of hope for them until they can hold that themselves.
And how important is it that a recruiter, I know you're much more than just the recruiter, not doing that roll down, but you do a lot across TA, employee experience, etc. But how important is it that folks in recruitment really buy into that purpose and agency?
It's a really good question. For me, it's massive, but that's me because it's a personal driver. I think in terms of the broader TA community within human services, it's important because it gives you a different level of understanding as to what's happening for your managers. So in our world right now, if a manager doesn't respond to me straight away, it's not because they're in a meeting with an external stakeholder or they're at a conference. It's often because someone's life is coming towards an end, and it gives me a different level of compassion. So I manage my own patience and frustration in a very different way. I think it also allows us to explain the elephant in the room for our candidates, particularly for people who are new coming into something like aged care. We can take people from all walks of life and we can train them to be a carer, or we can train them in hospitality to work in catering, etc. If I'm not able to explain what a good day and a bad day looks like, I'm going to hire someone. They'll get super excited because we pump them up. That's what recruiters do. And then they walk out the door because they see the reality and it's not for them. So we have a really important role to be that authentic voice for the organization and to ensure people are making the right choice in coming into a sector.
So interesting. I was talking the other day about this and saying that in lots of ways, retention is a bigger issue than attraction for
Absolutely.
aged care, for example. Not necessarily, certainly not that attraction is easy because it's hard, but the other thing that really strikes me, I'd love to hear from you about, is this idea of, we'll often say that in aged care, in disability, in human services, quite often the deep sense of purpose is strong, but the connection is between the employee and the client or the community group or the community. So it is about my residents. It is about my clients, the client with a disability or the clients with a disability. Part of the challenge that we pose to our clients and to people who work with us in this space is that's not enough. Otherwise, you're just going to say, make a difference, join us, make a difference. It's saying, why should I come and make a difference with you in your organization? Have you come up, well, I know you've come up against that.
Absolutely. And it's such a common thing in those areas that you've pointed out, because the difference between, if you think about a home care worker, they're driving around Sydney or Brisbane or wherever, and they're going into an older person's home and they're delivering cleaning services. They might be doing some shopping, but they can do that in 25 different companies. And the only difference is the color of the uniform and what the rostering system looks like and how easy or hard it is for them to submit a timesheet. So that connection is so important, because are we making life easy for them or are we making it hard?
Oh my gosh, that's great. I'm going to we're gonna forget. Let's forget the questions that I planned. Is that all right?
Sure.
I planned some questions and I gave you a heads up, but we're gonna go somewhere different because this
Okay.
is so much more interesting. Okay, so this really interests me. But when we talk about an EVP, for example, or we talk about an employer brand and an employee experience, in other words, why come and work and do this job as a carer or an in-home carer with you? We talk about functional, cultural, and social elements, and above it all, emotional across all those things. So functional might be what I'm paid. Emotional is how I feel about what I'm paid, and so on. But what you've touched on there that I love is, for example, my ability to contact my manager to get a reaction, the shifts I'm given,
Yes.
how easy it is to switch a shift. They're quite functional things on the surface,
Yeah.
but they make up such a massive part of how hard or difficult or easy my life is.
Absolutely.
So actually you can differentiate in home care, aged care, by making it easier for people to get their shifts and more predictable and give them those functional things and get that right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yet at the same time, there's this deep sense of purpose in helping people. So there's an interesting duality there, right? On the surface, the functional stuff, not just surface, it's the structural foundational stuff. What am I paid? How many shifts do I get? How near my home are you? How far do I have to travel each time?
Is my timesheet paid correctly?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I remember a guy, he said to me, it was a concreting business, I think it was, and we were doing EVP work and discussing it. It was in a CEO workshop, and he said, "Look, Mark, culture, yeah, whatever, impact, purpose." He said, "I don't know how this relates to me." And I said, "What do your people care about?" And he said, "Above all else, they want to come in and do their job and get home, and they want to be paid on time." And I said, "How long have you been doing this?" He said, 27 years. And I said, "How many times have you not paid them on time?" He said, "Twice." And he said, "The first time," and he knew the reasons. He was like, "The second time it was because the person who did it was sick and I forgot to press the button." And I said, "What did you do?" He said, "I apologized to all of them immediately." And you could see, and that is EVP and employer branding in action.
Absolutely.
It doesn't all need to be about big statements about culture and impact and connection.
Yeah. And I think if we get the functional pieces correct, and if we ensure we set up our new starters correctly in the first couple of days so that they understand what things look like, how will I find my roster? Once I get my roster, what's the information of the clients? Once this stuff is really straightforward for them, that's when we can then start building that connection to the organization, because we've already opened the door for connection or we've shut it.
All right. So this is what blows my mind, because I'll always say, recruiting, HRing, people and culturing, internal commsing in human services is really hard because it is so busy, it's under-resourced, it's always changing, there's issues that I understand that. And it's often dispersed workforce as well, right? But on the other hand, the benchmark, the bar is so low in expectations from your staff on the employee experience.
Yeah.
So a lot of people expect to be not rewarded too much and not recognized too much. And so actually getting those things right can make all the difference.
Massive difference.
I remember one, we were chatting to a group of aged care employees about culture and connection and growth. And someone said, "I just wish we had a kettle." And in their staff room, in their staff area, the kettle had been broken for 3 months. So they didn't have a kettle. I'm like, there's a Kmart just down the road, $9, And so I think what I'm hearing is really look at the fundamentals and the basic stuff of not just what do I get, but how easy is it to do this work and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And you also touched on the idea of in-home care. And, a lot of the time people think, great, I'll sit with old dears and I'll have a lovely conversation and I'll help them and I'll be the companion they haven't got. And most advertising is that. And yet what we find, and you said, it's dropping off their shopping, it's getting in and out. It's
cleaning.
It's cleaning their house.
Level
It's a
one,
cleaning job.
where most people start, it's cleaning. You're going into the home of an older person and allowing them to stay at home by doing the tasks that they mightn't be as able to do themselves.
Right.
Just cleaning.
Which is a different kind of service.
Yeah.
It's not coming in and saving their life every day. It's not
sitting
easy.
down, having a chat over a cup of coffee with a biscuit, which a lot of them think it is. It's getting in your car. It's following a map to a home that you've never been to before, perhaps in a part of the city you're not as comfortable driving to. I remember talking to a candidate who was like, I can't drive across the Harbour Bridge. I just can't. Please don't ask me to drive. And they had almost a panic attack thinking about it because that wasn't a comfort zone for them. So actually really painting the picture that your role is in the car
Yeah.
makes a big difference in whether somebody wants to do it or not. And how often do we forget to paint the reality of the job for people? Because as recruiters, we're writing these beautiful, elaborate adverts about make a difference and
Yeah.
impact. And it's like, actually, you need a car.
So you're doing that, or you're chucking out the same ad that's been there since 1952, right?
Absolutely.
So interesting. I like that idea. So it's what are the foundations? We talk about early years as well, kindergarten and early years and childcare. You can talk about culture and growth and all these things, but it needs to be on a parallel. I picture the careers site that has left-hand side and right-hand side. Benefits. What do I get paid? What do I get? What's in it for me? Near your house, free parking, uniform provided. And then alongside that, this purpose and connection, but not just a throwaway waffle, but actually, again, and maybe that's my next question. I will ask you a question at some point. How do you unpack, whether you're doing an EVP or not, how do you unpack what making a difference means here at Fresh Hope Communities versus the Burma Society, who you worked for previously, or versus another organization?
I think this goes back to a recruitment 101. Every recruiter is used to taking a job brief. And when you join an organization, you have to take so many job briefs all at the one time. But it's really getting immersed in the different divisions and the different teams because, to draw on the Benevolent Society's example, they had a lot of child and family practitioners. But what they did in out-of-home care versus what they did in child protection versus what they did in early intervention was completely different. So it's about that curiosity and getting to understand the business and what does a day in the life look like and what does a good day versus a bad day look like. And then talking to the individual people themselves. So almost like creating a persona by understanding why do they do this work? What drew them here? What maybe would detract other people from taking this role? So it's that curiosity, it's that inquisitiveness to build out your understanding. And I think that's a universal recruitment skill set.
And I agree with you. And you don't need an EVP to do that, right? We've talked about it before. Where an EVP can really help, we look at it and say, we can give you a consistent understanding and framework that moves and a device that moves. So a framework in terms of the structural pillars, but then device as in the story and the message and the narrative that can move to different roles and times. The other thing that I found is impactful, and I wonder what your take would be on this, is, again, you've got to start with the person and the pragmatic stuff, and you've got to talk about what it means for them, but also connecting somebody to what the organization is trying to do.
Yeah.
Even if you are the lowest paid person in that organization or the newest or the furthest away from the CEO geographically or in any sense, we're doing at the moment with a few organizations, it's about, well, where is this organization going? What are we trying to do for the world, for Australia, for Sydney, for wherever we are? And how is that different to where we've been before and to what others are doing? And it's a nuance, because you can't go hard with just that, because somebody's going to go, yeah, but what's tomorrow going to look like?
Yeah.
But have you seen that as well, that connection to wider purpose and organizational direction?
Yes, massive. And I think that's so important when we're going through a time of change. So you think about aged care, there's a big legislative change. Organizations might have gone through restructure. We saw a lot of this during COVID, where we didn't know what tomorrow was going to look like in terms of lockdowns. Would we ever get back into an office environment? You think about how much that shook up our world. And I think being able to talk to that and not being scared to talk to that, it allows individuals who are looking at potentially joining your organization to go, okay, I can see that perhaps there's still some ambiguity they're working through, but there's an avenue there for me to have some really good impact and maybe create a platform for myself to mold this role the way that I see it needs to be or the way the organization needs to be, but also for engagement. If your organization is genuinely going through change and you're not talking to your employees about that, it creates a chasm where they fill in that space. We're humans. We don't like uncertainty. So we fill it in, and we fill it in with gossip.
Yeah.
And we fill it in with well, I'm going to connect these dots, but they've connected 1 to 93 and they've missed some really important pieces.
Yeah.
So that has a really negative impact on your culture if you're not speaking to it, which will then lead to people potentially resigning that you didn't want to lose.
Yeah.
So I think there is a real there's an importance for, and there's a role for TA and people in culture teams to play in storytelling and in connecting the dots for new employees as well as existing employees.
All right, let's talk about that storytelling piece. I mean, you know, obviously in recruitment, a lot of people, it's recruitment advertising. It's, I've got these open roles, fill them, see the candidates and so on. What we'll often talk about is all the work alongside that, but also before that, around how are we building our brand, how are we staying front of mind, how are we building talent communities, whether they are talent pools and formalized, you know, data sets in systems, or whether it's more just a following. How important is recruitment marketing in consistently attracting the right people?
It's massive. We can't do our job. We can't have the right people in the right roles if we're not doing marketing. And there are so many jobs out there in the market right now for candidates that how do I differentiate myself from aged care or aged care provider B, C, D, E, F? It's about how do we tell that story.
And
So,
if you're relying on a job ad to do all that work, it's not going to happen, right? It's
yeah.
just one artifact.
And so often we're relying on this beautiful picture we got from marketing, which might be a stock image. How often is it? Do you look at it and go, "Oh, there's two providers using exactly the same person,"
Yeah.
you know? And then their language is very similar because maybe the recruiter was overworked and they used the same advert that someone had written before they went to the organization they're currently at, where they're using the same advert, or they got Copilot or ChatGPT to write the same adverts. You know, it's important for us to be authentic in our storytelling, and that's hard because it takes intention. And in our world right now, we are so busy that unfortunately as recruiters, we can't get to everything. We'd love to. So we take shortcuts. And those shortcuts means that something has to give. And we have to knowingly do that. But often we're on autopilot and we unfortunately don't realize the impact.
And we talk a lot about like what my team is trying to do all the time is connecting talent acquisition, retention, employee experience, culture with brand and marketing and comms. And it's an interesting point you make, because a TA person, above all else, to not get fired, you've got to fill those roles. You've got to get the job ads out. You've got to find the candidates and do it.
Yeah.
Applying the marketing mindset to that is to say, great, you've got to keep doing that. But the way I always say it is, if every time you need to hire, it's a mountain to climb, let's cut the top off all the mountains by having brand positioning already done, by being out there, by being favorably positioned in the minds of our target audience and in the gut of our target audience.
Yeah.
So, and I mean, look, I'll bring it back. When we worked together at the Benevolent Society, if you know, you had very limited budget into time and energy and all those things, and we just produced some content. Hey, do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, and it was such a great project. So we were really struggling to recruit allied health professionals. At the time, NDIS had released a whole heap of funding, so people needed services, and we needed allied health professionals to deliver the services.
And they were like hen's teeth, trying to find them.
So hard to recruit. And they were, if you looked at Seek's top 10 most difficult to fill roles, they were up there in pretty much every category. So we were trying to recruit. We weren't getting either ad response, and we were having to rely on agency. And none of our team were giving us referrals.
And when you say agency, it was locum agency staff, right?
Locum, but also recruitment agencies.
And also,
because a recruiter would float a candidate into us, and we were so desperate for staff. We were paying these exorbitant fees that we really couldn't afford to pay to hire the people. So in a particular quarter, we had 0 suitable candidates come through from our own ad response, from our headhunting, from the referrals. Like it was dry. So we created stories, and we picked 4 different employees that represented the different areas we needed to recruit. But we also picked 4 people very intentionally who represented different employee journeys with fresh hope. So they also represented the markets we were trying to tap into. And we did a story piece with them, and we got some beautiful pictures and some really short video content from that. And we released that out. You gave us a fantastic plan. Thank you. This fantastic plan as to how we should schedule the content and what should that release to the market look like. And it was fantastic. It was such a small project. We were able to do it what felt like very effortlessly. And the impact was phenomenal. You know, so the following quarter after we released that, we hired 44
Yeah.
allied health
So
professionals. It was phenomenal.
yeah.
And that could have cost us between like 300 and 400,000, depending on which agency they would have come through. We also started seeing referrals flowing through from the team,
From your existing team.
from the
Yeah.
existing team. So it started building up this channel that we knew was there, but for whatever reason, the employees weren't giving us their referrals. That got us a huge amount of credibility and buy-in with the executive team. So all of a sudden, every time we wanted to go to them with something else, we had this bank of this worked.
Yeah.
We prove it works. Here's the data. You know, even something as simple as going, our marketing team coming through and going, that was the best performing social media content we have ever released as an organization.
Yeah.
And I remember how shocked they were because I'd been telling them for months that employee content is going to be the most engaging content you could put out there. But they were like, how? That wasn't part of their paradigm before. And then all of a sudden they had the evidence.
Yes.
And the other piece for me from that project that was really powerful is the impact it had on the culture of the team.
Yes.
So all of a sudden, I wasn't just seeing Mark. I was seeing these multifaceted elements of Mark because Mark was featured in one of the stories.
Yes.
And that then allowed people to have conversations. So I recall sitting in the lunchroom, hearing some of the teams actually ask each other the same questions that you had asked in the interviews.
Right.
And that was awesome because they got to know each other on such a different level. And then they started talking about, hey, maybe I should nominate this person for an Employee of the Year award. And we saw this massive spike in the internal recognition, particularly from that disability services team, but also all the other teams, because we started to see each other as human beings who brought to work so much more than just the job that you performed every day. And that for me showed the power in a way that you can't quantify through data.
Absolutely.
It was
That's
this really positive ripple effect that ran through. And I often think in human services, what impact did that then have on the resident or on the client that we're working with? Because if I'm more engaged, I'm going to give a much better level of service to my client.
Yeah.
And it came through 4 stories that you guys pulled together in what felt like a very short period of time, but we felt the ripple effect for a really long time.
Absolutely. And I, that for what it's worth, for those who haven't seen that content, it's a short video and a written story about that person's life. And the key is, it's not a day in the life. It's not this is at 8 o'clock I do this and I do this. It's not these are my responsibilities. It's who is this human being? What led them to this moment and to this career choice? And how do they feel about it, good and bad? And what was really fascinating is, and I get this with every disability services organization we work with, it wasn't deep love and gratitude to the Benevolent Society. And that's not having to go at them. You can't expect people working in a sector like aged care disability to adore you as an employer because it's hard. It is hard stuff, but they really will acknowledge you for the things you do for them and with them. So I remember Tran's story, who, she and her partner, husband, I think at the time, were, she'd sort of talked about not being able to have a child, and they decided they wanted to change their lifestyle. So she moved from a major city, I think it was Sydney, to the Gold Coast.
Yep.
And the Benevolent Society has that reach. And so they said, great, we'll move with you. Come and work in this space. And then obviously had the child and all those things. So, there's a really great story there. But she wasn't there saying every single thing about the Benevolent Society is amazing. She was saying, at that moment in my life, I really needed to make that change. And because I worked for TBS, I was able to do it. Emily, the speechy, who was very about career, and she talked about mentors and about people. And, it isn't an organization where you've got loads and loads of people in this space, but those relationships really mattered to her. It's really powerful stuff. And what I love, what I'm hearing from you, is the combination of impact on TA, big tangible recruitment impact, big impact internally as well. The challenge is then, how do you scale that and how do you sustain it, right?
Yeah.
Because you can do project after project after project. What we're seeing more and more is it's about building advocacy programs. It's about building recognition. Here's one for you. So many organizations in this space and in other sectors do their annual CEO awards.
Yes.
There can be a space for it, and I'm not doing it down, but I would argue that alone as a recognition strategy is nowhere near enough. In fact, alone it causes more problems.
True.
What's your take around this ongoing advocacy, recognition, that employee sentiment as an ongoing strategy?
It's a really big question.
Sorry, I should have used the original ones. I threw them
Not
away.
at all, not at all. It's more, I want to think about the answer in a way that's really meaningful. But I think I've learned a lot about engagement from joining Fresh Hope. And part of that is because there's a focus on seeing the employee for who they are, hearing what they have to say and valuing them for it. And it's the first time I've really seen that, not just spoken about, but actually in practice. So we hear from the front line all the time that they don't have time to read emails. They are out on the floor in a residence room, bringing them down for dining, doing activities with them. They're not in front of their computer. It's a very different workforce.
We talked about comms and conversations. So everyone thinks every workforce will say comms aren't good enough. We need better comms.
They do.
But the assumption that some leaders and some comms folks make is, well, we've got to send them more stuff. And actually, most people don't want that.
No, because it's being sent in a way that makes it easy for shared services, but not for the end audience or customer, whatever language we're using to describe it. So by actually spending time with the team on the front line, what they want in recognition, completely different.
Yeah.
You know, I can't tell you the number of times this year I've heard from them saying stuff like, "Stop sending us cakes. I want more cakes." You know what I mean? Like, I'm trying to lose weight. Don't send me cakes, because we would have like some catering for International Nurses Day or for the aged care day, like all these different things. And they're like, no, but what they want is recognition that is meaningful for them. So to then understand, what does that look like? If I have a staff member for whom English is a second language and they are the only member of their family in Australia and they're sending money back overseas, they don't want birthday leave because they don't have family and friends to spend birthday leave with.
Yeah.
But for another employee who has a really big local family because they're working with half their family in our organization and everybody lives close to them, they want birthday leave because it's useful and they want to hang out with their family. So how do we get recognition and how do we get benefits that actually make a difference to the full gamut of employees that sit within that cohort?
So an entirely personalized employee experience and talent offer. Interesting. People talk a lot about personalizing flexibility or personalizing employee experience. I don't hear a lot of personalizing talent offer. In other words, personalizing what benefits I can choose from. That could be really interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Some of the best stuff I've seen and that we've been involved with around recognition is driving that culture of peer-to-peer shout outs. And in a sense, that TBS content was like that, right?
Very much so.
It was using that process as almost modeling, right? This idea of elevating the employee and what they stand for and who they are. But I remember we did some work in WA with aged care where they only had about 400 people in the organization, but we had Letters Week and we put out these postcards and just communicated internally saying, look, online or in person, you can take a postcard, you can put someone's name on it, a teammate, write a note of why you want to thank them, big, small, whatever, and it will get sent. And 350, 400 employees, I think they had 3,500 cards shared in a week, right? And what was really key, and this is what people don't see, it's not just a wonderful idea and it just happened. It was the work behind the scenes to make it really easy to grab a card and do it. We had leaders delivering them to people's desks. So it was the leader, and actually it was the leader that I was targeting because I wanted the leader to appreciate what had happened, not just the person who got it. It was the way that we captured the stories and articulated them and shared them externally, because people see it. Nobody says they want it all to be about them or they want the limelight, but it does give you this real. It can, if it's done properly, give you a real sense of pride to see your organization sharing your story or others' stories proudly. Say, not as a badge of honor saying we're an amazing place to work, here's proof, but actually saying we're just really proud of the people who choose to work here and we're grateful they do.
Yeah.
Really interesting.
Yeah.
And as a talent acquisition leader, I mean, you've done loads of this. How important is it to feel that the organization is walking the talk? Because you're out there pitching the product, getting people to want to come and work here. How important is that? And where have you seen that work really well?
I think that makes a big difference for TA because we sometimes as recruiters, we can be seen as used car sale. and that's really where we're selling an organization who aren't walking the walk. Whereas when the organization is actually living up to the values, they're not just written on the wall, they're living and breathing and they're evolving with the organization, our lives become much easier because we're not bullshitting.
Mm.
We're actually telling the truth.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a really big differentiator for TA teams that can have really good impact in getting mission-aligned employees who are values-aligned, who can hit the ground running really quickly because there's already that bit of a connection point for them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So we'll have to finish up, unfortunately. I'd love to do this all day, but I'd love to know your current setup. What are you loving? What's great for you about Fresh Hope Communities and what you're doing there?
Good question. A lot. So I've already talked a bit about the culture and about our focus on employees,
Yeah.
and that permeates everything that we're doing. So that for me is massive because I get to see the impact that I'm having through our employees to our residents at the end of the day. You go on side and they're happy. Our residents are happy and our teams are happy because when we look after our employees, we know that if they're thriving, our residents will thrive.
Yeah.
I'm part of a really incredible people and culture team, really high performing team where we're on the same page. We have each other's back. We work incredibly collaboratively on different initiatives. So it's not just Aoife as the one kind of talent acquisition manager. I'm backed by the people and culture leadership team. And my recruiter is backed by the business partners and the coordinators and so on. So it magnifies our impact. And it's always important to work with really nice people.
Yeah.
You know, Gallup talks about having a best friend at work. I think it's really important on the bad days or the days when things appear to be going wrong. We're human, we get frustrated, that you have someone that you can just go,
Yeah.
you know, you need to have that. So I'm loving that. And I guess the final piece is the work because my role was newly created.
Right.
So I have, to some extent, a greenfield. Yes, we've been doing recruitment and we're really good at that kind of coordination of new people coming in the door. But I've also got this huge runway within which that I can operate
Right.
and things I can create and things I can refine. And my stakeholders are bought into that, which is, it's really nice. I like that sort of work.
I love it. Last question, I promise. TA is and recruitment is one of those things that lots of people end up in. And I think it is possible in some organizations, too many organizations, to be an admin recruiter. And we all know they're the folks who should be worried about being replaced by AI and so on. And I'm not trying to vilify or villainize, not sure what the phrase is, but vilify those people. You know, you're the other side of TA. You're somebody who brings everything you've got to it, who you've professionalized it and the way you do it. What is your advice to somebody who is considering coming into a career in TA in human services?
That is a really good question.
Should they?
Yes.
No pause.
Not at all. Not at all. Any day of the week, I am much better at recruiting in human services than I am in FMCG or pharmaceutical or so on. There's, for me, if you're mission aligned or your values aligned, this is the best place you can possibly work.
I love it.
Advice. I would advise them to be curious. I'd advise them to listen more than they talk. So, you know, when you're going to meet with a stakeholder, hear what they're saying. Don't just come up like, oh, some recruiters are already thinking about the next question before they've heard the answer. Listen, really internalize what's going on. Watch what you're seeing around you and have curiosity so that you can actually understand what does that mean. Why are you moving that resident there or whatever the case may be? So I guess they'd be the key bits. I'm sure if you allowed me to think about it, I'd come up with a million other things. But
why would I
that's it
when I
for
can
now.
just throw questions at you? And I think that's fantastic. And the one I'd add, for what it's worth, is I'd be saying, ditch the mindset that you're there to serve them. And you know, and so the classic thing for an external recruiter is, you're going to pay me a lot of money, but I'll take all the problem off your hands. You are never, internal or external, you are never taking the problem off the hiring manager's hands. It is their problem that they don't have somebody in that role, right? And they're the ones who are going to suffer if you don't hire or if you hire the wrong person. But what I try and encourage people to do, and this is a hard one because it's about building credibility and trust with this stakeholder, the recruiting manager or hiring manager, is to say your first question shouldn't be, who do you want? Who do I have to go and find for you? Your first question should be, who should apply for this job and why should they be excited to hire for this job, to apply for this job? And I think framing a relationship that says, help me help you,
Yeah.
is which is really hard to do, especially if you're more junior in TA.
I hear you, but I also would challenge that a little
Mhm.
bit. I don't think it's that hard
Okay.
if you've got a service mindset.
Right.
If your view is exactly as you said, the problem is the managers. But if you see that my role is to help the manager, that becomes much easier. If your role is about pushing your process onto the manager because that makes your life easier, that's where
Or let the hiring manager push their problem to you.
yes, that's where we all need some professional boundaries.
The idea of service mindset I like, because
Yeah,
great service is about saying, let me help you get the outcome you want
exactly.
with confidence and comfort and not taking on, not being someone's slave.
Yeah. It allows you to set boundaries, but it also allows you to have impact because you're there to be a support
Mm.
or to assist or to help or whatever language makes sense to you as a person. But it's almost like having servant leadership as a
Yeah.
as a natural approach. And I think a HR coordinator or a recruitment coordinator can have that just in the same way as a head of TA can have that approach.
And it's you're bringing the expertise. You're not just the dog's body to go and do the admin of the recruitment, right?
Yeah.
That's fab. But the biggest thing you said for me in that last section was to genuinely listen more than you talk and be interested and curious and involved.
Yeah. Often as recruiters, we think we have the answer because at a webinar told us X, Y, and Z.
Mm.
And that's great, but that doesn't help a manager who right now needs X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's recognizing what they need
Mm.
and then figuring out a way as to how you can bring them on the journey of getting them where you need them to go because perhaps the culture isn't great or they're only offering casual roles when the market wants permanent part-time. Like there's so many practical bits we can support the manager to get on a particular path.
Mm.
But ultimately, they're the hiring manager. It's their choice. It's their budget.
Mm.
We're there to support them.
That's super cool. Thank you so much, Aoife. I'm really inspired by what you do. What I love is there's a lot of people out there on the circuit. There's a lot of people talking, but there's people who are just head down, getting it done consistently. And I think you're a great advert for what talent acquisition should be in human services.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Cheers, everybody. I hope you enjoy the episode.